The latest in that looming showdown between President Trump and special counsel Robert Mueller. Mueller is insisting on questioning the president about obstruction of justice, the same charges leveled against Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon. And sources tell ABC News that this latest communication has enraged the president, sparking his first direct call for Attorney General Jeff Sessions to shut down the investigation. Our senior White House correspondent Cecilia Vega starts us off. Good morning, Cecilia.
George, good morning to you. This was among President Trump's most overt threats against the special counsel yet, and it is not just his critics who say this could amount to obstruction of justice. Some in his own party are now saying it is totally inappropriate for a sitting president to call for an end to an investigation into himself. This morning, sources tell ABC News President Trump was outraged after learning that among the topics special counsel Robert Mueller wants to question him about is obstruction of justice. The president recently learned about the new development, and sources say it enraged him so it prompted this extraordinary tweet that critics say could amount to obstruction. The president writing, "Attorney General Jeff Sessions should stop this rigged witch hunt right now before it continues to stain our country any further." That sent his legal team into immediate damage control mode.
He used the word should, he didn't use the word must, and there was no presidential directive that followed it. But he didn't direct him to do it, and he's not going to direct him to do it.
The tweet outraged even some in the president's own party. Maine Senator Susan Collins calling it totally inappropriate, saying the president should not be talking about the investigation at all. The top Democrat on the House Intelligence Committee was blunt. This is an attempt to obstruct justice, hiding in plain sight. In the past, aides have insisted that the president's tweets are official White House policy. But Press Secretary Sarah Sanders says this one was just his opinion.
It's not an order, it's the president's opinion. The president is not obstructing, he's fighting back.
Negotiations over a sit-down between the president and special counsel have been ongoing for months. But now Mueller has indicated he wants to question the president, both in writing and in person. So will this interview actually ever happen? The president's lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, said yesterday that the president still wants to sit down with Robert Mueller, but his lawyers are adamant they do not want this interview to happen. Giuliani says the legal team still cannot reach an agreement with the special counsel over just the ground rules. So while Mueller may want to ask about obstruction of justice, George, there is no indication that the president's team is going to agree to this.
Game of chicken right now. Okay, Cecilia, thanks very much. Let's bring in our chief legal analyst, Dan Abrams. President's words in that tweet pretty clear. The Attorney General should stop this rigged witch hunt.
So there's no question this is an effort to undermine, undercut, impair, maybe hinder the investigation. Does that necessarily mean it's legal obstruction of justice? That's a question that Robert Mueller is going to have to assess.
The question is, how does this tweet fit into every other action of the president over the last year, year and a half?
Exactly. You don't, and they won't, look at this tweet in isolation. It won't just be, was that tweet obstruction of justice? The question will be, did that tweet in conjunction with all the other evidence they have, all the other actions that the president's taken, all the other things he has done, does that together reach the level of obstruction of justice? And again, I think it's worth reminding people that most people do not expect that even if it does reach that level, that Robert Mueller would seek to indict the president.
He'd send a report to
Congress.
He would send
a report to Congress because he's the president.
And of course, the impact of that would depend on when he sends that report to Congress, which Congress receives it.
Absolutely.
Which gets to the question now is, how long does Robert Mueller allow this back and forth, this endless 8-month negotiation between his side and the president to go on over the interview?
Let's just be clear. All we know about this alleged negotiation is through the Trump side. We don't know exactly, right, we don't know exactly what Mueller's saying or not saying in response. So how serious is this negotiation? Unclear. Robert Mueller's going to work on his timeline, not on the president's, not on Rudy Giuliani's. And at some point, if he feels that he's not going to get this interview to work, he'll move forward.
Not just his timeline, though, because we're heading towards an election. Early September seems to be his deadline for any real action before the election, isn't it?
You would think so. But again, you would hope that Robert Mueller is not working on an election timeline. I mean, he's got to think about it in the back of his head, but you also have to think that this is an investigation, and he has to move forward as he thinks appropriate, regardless of the election timeline.
Dan Abrams, thanks very much.